Captain Snout, How I Came to Be by Cheese Flavor House. Snout McHoggenchop was only 8 years old and he had a very big problem. He was the youngest of 14 piggy siblings. Life in the McHoggenchop house was never quiet. Not in the morning, not in the afternoon, not even when the crickets sing at night. Petunia played the violin so loudly that even the chickens outside covered their ears. Samuel clanged the hammer in the barn, building a flying machine out of buckets and rubber bands. Rosie and Riddle argued about dishes every single day. Other siblings added their own chaos. Daisy shouted poems in the hallway. Bunny juggled apples and dropped most of them. Marigold tap danced on the wooden floors, and twins Pippi and Poppy scrambled on the walls with chalk, insisting they were the greatest artists. And in the middle of it all was Snout, small, soft voice, and often overlooked. At dinner, Snout tried to share about the stars he saw twinkling above the farmhouse, or the silly rhymes he made up while brushing his teeth. But someone always talked louder. Someone always cracked a joke. Someone always spilled juice. Snout's words were swept away like crumbs from a big table. Sometimes he felt like the smallest shadow in a very big, very noisy family. But deep inside, Snout had a secret hope. He believed, no, he knew he was meant for something more. One evening, after another loud dinner, Snout pushed back his chair. Nobody noticed. Nobody asked where he was going. He tiptoed down the hallway past the piles of laundry into the old pantry. The pantry smelled of dusk and forgotten spices. Cobwebs clung to the corners. Jars of pickles and jam lined the shelves, and onions dangled on ropes like sleepy lanterns. Snout reached for the loaf of bread, but then he saw it, a faint glow, a shimmer of light behind a row of jars. He pushed them aside and gasped. There, tucked in the shadows, sat a salt shaker. It sparkled like tiny stars. Etched on its side these words: To the one who seasons with love, the world shall taste whole again. Snout blinked. Seasoned with love? His hooves trembled as he sprinkled a tiny pinch onto his bread. He took a bite. Oh! It was the most amazing, delicious thing he had ever tasted. Warm, rich, comforting. But it wasn't just flavor. It was a warm spread through his chest, like the biggest hug he had ever had, but always wanted. The next day, Snout decided to test the shaker. At dinner, when no one was looking, he sprinkled just a little on the bland carrots. Wow! Petunia squeaked. These taste like honey glazed magic. Snout's ears perked. He giggled quietly. He dashed a pinch onto the plain rice. It transformed into a feast so good, even Hamuel jumped his wrench and gobbled it up. But the best part wasn't the food. Rosie and Riddle didn't argue. Mary Gold stopped stomping her feet. Even Pippi and Poppy were too busy smiling to scribble on the table. For the first time in forever, the McHoggenchop's house was calm. It was joyful. Snout puffed his chest. He tied a red tablecloth around his neck like a cape. He climbed onto the chair and whispered, I am Captain Snout, bringer of flavor and friendship. No one heard him, but Snout didn't mind because he knew he had a secret. He really did have a gift. That week, Snout kept sprinkling. He had a dash to a porridge. Breakfast became everyone's favorite meal. He had a sprinkle to cabbage. Even the pickiest siblings licked their plates clean. And every time he used it, something magical happened. Laughter bubbled, stories were shared, kindness blossomed. At night, Snout held the shaker close. Thank you, he whispered. You helped them see each other. Then came the harvest festival. It was the biggest day of the year, a day for music, food, and games, but something was wrong. The bakers argued about whose cake was the tallest, the musicians argued about who deserved the main stage, and the farmers argued about whose pumpkins were the biggest. Even the mayor and the blacksmith shouted about whose banner should hang across the square. By morning, no one was smiling. The air felt heavy with competition, not celebration. The festival only got worse. People crossed their arms while frowns filled the streets. Neighbors muttered instead of singing. The harvest festival was falling apart. Snout's ears dropped. He felt like the shaker in his pocket. His heart thumped bravely. He climbed onto the table. Everyone, please, just taste this, he cried. But nobody listened, so Snout took a deep breath. He shook the seasoning high into the air. He let it rain down like stardust. The salt sparkled as it landed on breads, pies, and soups. The villagers took a bite, first one, then another, and then silence. Smiles spread. Laughter followed as songs rose. Bakers swapped slices of cake, farmers admired each other's pumpkins, neighbors shared stories and hugs. The harvest festival shimmered with joy again. For the first time, Snout's family and the whole village saw him clearly, not as a little one, not as a shadow at the table, but as the piggy who brought them all back together. That night, Snout laid in the bed, with his cape folded neatly beside him, and the salt shaker tucked close to his heart. I understand now, he whispered. My power isn't just flavor, it's helping people slow down, listen, and love. And from that day on, Snout made a promise he would sprinkle joy wherever it was needed, at home, in the village, and maybe one day all around the world. Because even the smallest piggy can make a difference. The end.